I never liked clowns. Even before that day, there was something about them that made my skin crawl. The painted faces, the exaggerated smiles, the way they always seemed too cheerful. It felt fake, like they were hiding something underneath. But I was 10, and my parents didn't know that. They just wanted to throw me the best birthday party ever. It was a sunny Saturday afternoon, and our backyard was packed with kids from my class. There was a table full of cake and candy, colorful streamers hanging from the trees, and a big inflatable bounce house that made all the kids scream with excitement. My mom had gone all out. She even hired professional entertainers, a clown and a magician. The clown arrived first. His name was Tangles the Clown. He had messy red hair that stuck out from under a tiny hat, a bright blue suit with oversized buttons, and a painted-on smile that stretched too wide across his face. "Hey, birthday boy," he said in a high-pitched voice, ruffling my hair. "You ready for the best day of your life?" I forced a smile and nodded, but something about him made my stomach twist. A few minutes later, the magician showed up. He called himself the Great Salvo, and he looked the part, tall and lanky, dressed in a dark purple suit with a matching top hat. His face was clean-shaven, except for a perfectly curled mustache that twitched whenever he smiled. Unlike Tangles, Salvo didn't talk much. He just gave me a wink and a small bow before heading to set up his tricks. First, everything was normal. Tangles juggled colorful balls and twisted balloons into weird animals. Salvo made coins disappear and pulled scarves from thin air. The kids loved it. But then, things started to feel off. It was little things at first. Tangles would hold eye contact for too long. His smile never faded, even when he wasn't performing. And when a girl cried because she was afraid of clowns, he crouched down next to her and whispered something in her ear. I don't know what he said, but she ran inside the house and refused to come back out. Then there was Salvo. His tricks were impressive, but they got stranger as the party went on. At one point he asked my best friend, Jake, to pick a card from a deck. When Jake pulled out a card, Salvo's grin widened, and he said, "That's the death card." Jake laughed nervously and showed the card to the rest of us. It was just a regular Queen of Hearts. Salvo chuckled. "Oops, my mistake." He winked at me like it was an inside joke. I didn't find it funny, but the real nightmare didn't start until the piñata game. My dad had set up a large piñata shaped like a dragon. It hung from a tree in the middle of the yard, filled with candy. Tangles was in charge of the game. He handed me a blindfold and a plastic bat. "All right, birthday boy, give it a big swing." I put the blindfold on and gripped the bat tightly. The kids cheered as I took the first swing, missing completely. Laughter erupted around me. I swung again, nothing. That's when I heard it. A soft shuffling sound, barely noticeable over the kids' laughter. Then a whisper, right next to my ear. "You're going to break more than just the piñata." My whole body froze. I yanked the blindfold off and spun around. Tangles was standing directly behind me, inches from my face. His painted smile was wider than before, his eyes dark and unblinking. I stepped back, my heart pounding. "What did you say?" Tangles tilted his head. "Nothing, birthday boy. Keep swinging." He turned to the other kids and let out a high-pitched laugh, as if it was all part of the act. But I knew what I heard, and I wasn't the only one. Jake grabbed my arm. "Dude, that was weird." I nodded. We both looked toward the Great Salvo, expecting him to say something, maybe to step in and calm things down. But he wasn't watching the game. He was staring straight at my parents, watching them. His lips were moving, like he was whispering something to himself. And in his hands, he was sharpening one of his magician's wands against a rock. I should have told my parents right then and there. I should have screamed. But I was 10. I didn't understand the danger. Not yet. And then, someone screamed. A real, blood-curdling scream. And that's when everything fell apart. I thought it was just a party. But it turned into the scariest night of my life. The scream cut through the laughter like a knife. Every kid in the backyard froze. The music from the Bluetooth speaker played on, completely out of place now. For a second, nobody moved. Then I saw Emily, one of the girls from my class, standing near the back door, her face pale, her hands shaking. She was the one who screamed. My mom rushed over, kneeling beside her. "Sweetie, what's wrong?" Emily pointed toward the house, her mouth opening and closing like she couldn't get the words out. I followed her gaze. The sliding glass door to the kitchen was open, and just inside, standing in the dim light of our house, was the great Salvo. He wasn't doing a trick. He wasn't smiling. He was just standing there, staring at my parents. My dad frowned and started walking toward the house. "Hey, buddy, the party's out here." Salvo didn't move. Instead, he slid his hand into his jacket pocket and pulled something out. At first, I thought it was one of his magic props. But it wasn't. It was a long, silver kitchen knife. A wave of panic surged through me. "Dad!" Before I could say anything, Salvo grinned. Then, right in front of everyone, he dragged the knife across his tongue. Gasps filled the yard. A few kids started crying. One of the moms covered her mouth in horror. But Salvo didn't seem to notice. He just licked his lips, as if tasting the metal, and let out a low chuckle. Then he turned and disappeared into the house. My dad bolted after him. "Hey, what the hell do you think you're doing?" Tangles, who had been standing near me, burst into laughter. Not normal laughter. Not a nervous chuckle. Loud, manic, high-pitched laughter that didn't stop. The kids backed away from him, their faces twisted in confusion and fear. But Tangles didn't care. He bent over, clutching his stomach, laughing like he just heard the funniest joke in the world. Then he straightened up suddenly, wiping his eyes. And when he looked at me, his painted-on smile didn't match his real one. His real smile was wider. Too wide. "Best birthday ever, huh?" he whispered. I felt a chill run down my spine. I wanted to run inside, to find my dad, to lock all the doors and call the police. But before I could move, Tangles grabbed my wrist. "Where do you think you're going, birthday boy?" His grip tightened. I tried to pull away, but he was stronger than he looked. "Let go," I said, my voice shaking. Tangles leaned in close, so close I could smell the grease paint on his face. Then he whispered something I'll never forget. "You're not leaving this party." The backyard exploded into chaos. Moms grabbed their kids, dragging them toward the gate. A few of the dads ran inside after my dad. My mom was shouting something, but I couldn't hear her over the screaming. And still, Tangles wouldn't let go of my wrist. I did the only thing I could think of. I kicked him as hard as I could in the shin. He yelped and loosened his grip just enough for me to yank free. I didn't wait. I ran toward the house, pushing past the other kids as I sprinted for the back door. When I got inside, the first thing I saw was my dad. He was standing completely still, his face pale, his fists clenched at his sides. Salvo was gone. The only sign that he had even been there was the knife, stuck deep into our kitchen table. My mom ran inside behind me, out of breath. "Where is he?" she asked, panic in her voice. My dad shook his head. "I don't know. He just disappeared." The other parents started calling 911. Some of them ran to their cars, dragging their kids with them. But I wasn't looking at them. I was looking out the window. Tangles. He was standing in the middle of the yard, his eyes locked onto me. All the kids were gone now. The backyard was empty except for him. And then he reached into his pocket. I thought he was going to pull out a balloon or a juggling ball, but instead he pulled out something small and white. I squinted, trying to see what it was, and then my stomach dropped. It was a photo of me. I felt sick. How did he have that? Where did he get it? I turned to my dad. He has a picture of me. My dad's face darkened. He stormed toward the back door, but before he could get outside, Tangles was already gone. The backyard was empty. The party was over. But the nightmare was just beginning. The party ended in chaos. Parents rushed their kids into cars, some barely pausing to say goodbye. My mom tried to calm everyone down, but it was useless. The 911 operator told us officers were on the way, but by the time they arrived, both Tangles and Salvo were gone. No one had seen where they went. The police searched the backyard, the house, even the neighborhood, but found nothing. They just vanished? My dad asked in disbelief. The officer, a heavy-set man with a tired face, sighed. We're looking into it. You said these guys were hired for the party. Mom nodded. We found them online. They had good reviews. The officer jotted something in his notepad. We'll check it out. Then he turned to me. You're the birthday boy, right? I nodded. My throat felt dry. The officer crouched down slightly, making eye contact. You said the clown had a picture of you? Yes. My voice came out quieter than I wanted. It was just a normal picture, like one my parents would have. The officer exchanged a glance with my dad. Where do you keep family photos? My dad blinked. In albums. Some on the fridge. And, he stopped. The officer caught it. And what? Dad turned and walked straight to the fridge. The room felt colder as he stared at it. I followed his gaze, and my stomach dropped. The photos we always kept on the fridge, the ones with magnets holding them up, were gone. Every single one. Mom let out a shaky breath. They were here earlier. I know they were. My mind raced. Had Salvo taken them when he was inside? Had Tangles grabbed them while we were distracted? The officer scribbled in his notepad. We'll send a patrol car to circle the area tonight. Just to be safe. Safe. That word felt meaningless now. That night, I lay in bed, staring at the ceiling. Every sound outside made me tense. At some point, my mom knocked softly on my door. Honey. I sat up. Yeah. She stepped inside, holding something behind her back. I found this on the porch. She handed me an envelope. My stomach twisted as I took it. The paper felt dirty, like it had been left in the mud. I hesitated before opening it. Inside was a single Polaroid photo. My hands started shaking. It was a picture of our house. But it wasn't taken during the day. It was taken at night. From outside my bedroom window. My breath hitched. When was this taken? Mom didn't answer. But I could tell from the look on her face. She didn't know. Dad called the police again. They sent another officer who took the photo and asked us the same questions. No, we hadn't heard anything outside. No, we didn't see who left it. Before he left, the officer sighed, rubbing his forehead. This might be a scare tactic, he said. People like this, they get off on making others afraid. Dad clenched his fists. So what do we do? The officer gave a small shrug. Stay vigilant. Keep your doors locked. Call us if anything happens. Then he left, and we were alone again. The next few days were quiet. Too quiet. No strange phone calls. No weird packages. It was like they had disappeared completely. But that just made it worse. Because it meant I never saw it coming. It was 2 nights later when I woke up suddenly. At first, I didn't know why. Then I realized my bedroom window was open. I sat up fast, my heart pounding. I knew I'd closed it before bed. My hands shook as I reached for the lamp on my nightstand. But before I could turn it on, I heard something. A soft shuffling sound. Coming from inside my room. I froze. My breath caught in my throat. I could feel it. Someone was in the room with me. Slowly, I turned my head toward the foot of my bed. And that's when I saw him. Tangles the clown. Standing inside my room. Watching me. He wasn't smiling this time. His face was completely blank. His dark eyes locked onto mine. I wanted to scream, but nothing came out. Then he raised his hand. And in it was a pair of scissors. I finally found my voice. I screamed. The lights flicked on immediately. Footsteps pounded down the hall. My dad burst into the room, his face wild with panic. What happened? I pointed toward the foot of the bed, gasping for air. He was. But there was no one there. The window was still open. The curtains swayed slightly from the cold night air. And on the floor, right where Tangles had been standing, was something small and shiny. Dad picked it up, his face pale. A single clown button. The same oversized buttons Tangles had on his suit. Mom called the police again. By the time the officers arrived, I was shaking so badly I could barely speak. The officer checked the window, the yard, but found nothing. "Are you sure you weren't dreaming?" he asked. I wanted to yell at him. I wasn't dreaming. But then they found something else. Outside, near the bushes beneath my window, were footprints. Large, heavy boot prints. And next to them, a small pile of Polaroid photos. The officers carefully picked them up, flipping through them one by one. I saw them before they took them away. They were all pictures of me, sleeping. Tangles had been inside my room, and he could come back anytime he wanted. The police stayed at our house for hours. They took my statement, my parents' statement, and the Polaroids, but their faces told me everything I needed to know. They had no idea where Tangles was. And worse, they had no way to stop him. That night I didn't sleep. Every creak of the house made my pulse spike. Every shadow in the room felt like it was shifting. I kept imagining Tangles standing in the doorway, watching me. Would he come back? Had he ever really left? By morning, my parents had made a decision. "We're leaving," Dad said. "We'll stay at your aunt's for a while, just until we figure out what's going on." I didn't argue. I wanted to go. We packed quickly. Just essentials. Clothes, valuables, anything we'd need for a few weeks. My mom kept the curtains drawn, flinching at every sound outside. My dad checked the locks twice, then 3 times. By noon, we were ready to leave. But when we stepped outside, everything changed. Our car was gone. Dad stopped cold on the porch. "Where the hell is the car?" We all stared at the empty driveway, stunned. "It was right there," Mom whispered. We looked around, but there was no sign of it. No broken glass. No skid marks. Nothing. Like it had vanished into thin air. Dad pulled out his phone. "I'm calling the cops." But before he could dial, we heard the honk. A single, loud honk from the end of the street. We all turned, and I will never forget what I saw. At the end of the block, our car was parked. In the driver's seat was Tangles the clown. His white-gloved hand waved at us. Then slowly he pressed the horn again, honk. I felt my mom's nails dig into my shoulder. My dad was frozen, and Tangles just sat there, smiling, waiting. Then he opened the car door. My dad snapped out of it. "Inside. Now." He shoved us back into the house, slamming the door shut and locking it. I ran to the window, my heart hammering. Tangles was still there, standing in the middle of the street, motionless, waiting. Then he started walking toward the house. Slow, deliberate, one step at a time. I could see it now, his suit was filthy. The once bright colors were faded and smeared with dirt. His painted smile was cracked, revealing too much of his real mouth. And in his hand, swinging lazily at his side, a long, rusted crowbar. "Dad," I whispered. He was already on the phone with 911. "There's a man outside our house," he said, his voice tight. "He's the suspect you're looking for. He just stole my damn car." He turned to us. "Go upstairs. Now." We ran up to my parents' bedroom, slamming the door shut. My mom pulled me close, whispering, "It's okay, baby. The police will be here soon." But I wasn't sure I believed her, because downstairs, I heard the first hit. Bang! The front door shook violently. Then another. Bang! Bang! The sound of metal smashing against wood. "He's trying to break in," I whispered. Mom squeezed my hand. "The police are coming." But I could hear it in her voice. She was lying, because the sirens were not coming. Downstairs, the doorframe splintered. Then silence. A single, slow creak as the door swung open. Tangles was inside the house. I clamped my hand over my mouth to keep from making a sound. From downstairs, I heard footsteps on the wood floor. Slow, heavy, like he wanted us to know he was coming. "Where's the birthday boy?" he called. His voice was wrong. Not high-pitched and playful like before. Now it was low, rough, like he wasn't even trying to pretend anymore. The footsteps got louder. He was coming up the stairs. My dad grabbed a baseball bat from the closet, positioning himself near the door. I had never seen him look so terrified. My mom clutched me so tightly I could barely breathe. Then Tangles stopped, right outside the bedroom door. For a long moment, There was nothing. Just silence. Then, click, the doorknob turned. I sucked in a breath, waiting, but the door never opened. Instead, I heard something else. A faint, distant sound. At first, I thought I imagined it. But then, sirens. Tangles laughed. A slow, wheezing laugh that made my skin crawl. Then, the footsteps retreated. I heard him bounding down the stairs, his heavy boots slamming against the floor. Then the front door creaked open, and he was gone. By the time the police arrived, there was no sign of him. Our stolen car was left abandoned down the street, engine still running. The officers searched the area for hours but found nothing. It was like he had just disappeared. Epilogue. We left town the next morning. We never went back. And I never had another birthday party. A month later, the police called with an update. They never found Tangles. But they did find something else. They had traced his online hiring profile, the one my mom had used to book him. It was fake. And worse, they found other families who had hired him before us. Families that had also reported strange things. Footsteps outside their homes. Polaroids left on their porches. But there was one case that stood out. One where the hired clown never left. One where the birthday boy disappeared. To this day, they never found that kid. And the last thing his parents ever saw was a clown standing in their backyard. Watching. Waiting.